the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 68, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after Nala, despoiled of his kingdom, had with his wife become a bondsman, Bhima, with the desire of seeing Nala, sent out Brahmanas to search for him. And giving them profuse wealth, Bhima enjoined on them, saying, Do ye search for Nala, and also for my daughter Damayanti. He who achieveth this task, viz., ascertaining where the ruler of the Nishadhas is, bringeth him and my daughter hither, will obtain from me 1,000 kin, and fields, and a village resembling a town. Even if failing to bring Damayanti and Nala here, he that succeeds in learning their whereabouts, will get from me the wealth represented by 1,000 kin. Thus addressed, the Brahmanas cheerfully went out in all directions seeking Nala and his wife in cities and provinces. But Nala or his spouse they found not anywhere. Until at length, searching in the beautiful city of the Chedis, a Brahmana named Sudev, during the time of the king's prayers, saw the princess of Vidarbha in the palace of the king, seated with Sunanda. And her incomparable beauty was slightly perceptible, like the brightness of a fire enveloped in curls of smoke. And beholding that lady of large eyes, soiled and emaciated, he decided her to be Damayanti, coming to that conclusion from various reasons. And Sudev said, As I saw her before, this damsel is even so at present. Oh, I am blessed, by casting my eyes on this fair one, like Shri herself delighting the worlds. Resembling the full moon, of unchanging youth, of well-rounded breasts, illumining all sides by her splendor, possessed of large eyes like beautiful lotuses, like unto Karna's Rati herself, the delight of all the worlds like the rays of the full moon. Oh, she looketh like a lotus stalk transplanted by adverse fortune from the withered lake and covered with mire in the process, and oppressed with grief on account of her husband, and melancholy. She looketh like the night of the full moon when Rahu hath swallowed that luminary, or like a stream whose current hath dried up. Her plight is very much like that of a ravaged lake with the leaves of its lotuses crushed by the trunks of elephants, and with its birds and fowls affrighted by the invasion. Indeed, this girl of a delicate frame and of lovely limbs, and deserving to dwell in a mansion decked with gems, is now like an uprooted lotus stalk, scorched by the sun, endued with beauty and generosity of nature, and destitute of ornaments, though deserving of them. She looketh like the moon, new bent in heaven, but covered with black clouds. Destitute of comforts and luxuries, separated from loved ones and friends, she liveth in distress, supported by the hope of beholding her Lord. Verily, the husband is the best ornament of a woman, however destitute of ornaments. Without her husband beside her, this lady, though beautiful, shineth not. It is a hard feat achieved by Nala in that he liveth without succumbing to grief, though separated from such a wife. Beholding this damsel, possessed of black hair and of eyes like lotus leaves, in woe though deserving of bliss, even my heart is pained. Alas! When shall this girl, graced with auspicious marks and devoted to her husband, crossing this ocean of woe, regain the company of her lord, like Rohini regaining the moons? Surely, the king of the Nishadhas will experience in regaining her the delight that a king deprived of his kingdom experienceth in regaining his kingdom. Equal to her in nature and age and extraction, Nala deserveth the daughter of Vidarbha, and this damsel of black eyes also deserveth him. It behoveth me to comfort the queen of that hero of immeasurable prowess and endued with energy and might, since she is so eager to meet her husband. I will console this afflicted girl of face like the full moon, and suffering distress that she had never before endured, and ever meditating on her Lord. Brihadasva continued, having thus reflected on these various circumstances and signs, the Brahmana, Sudev, approached Damayanti, and addressed her, saying, O Princess of Vidarbha, I am Sudev, the dear friend of thy brother. I have come here, seeking thee, at the desire of King Bhima. Thy father is well, and also thy mother, and thy brothers. And thy son and daughter, blessed with length of days, are living in peace. Thy relatives, though alive, are almost dead on thy account, and hundreds of Brahmanas are ranging the world in search of thee. Brihadasva continued, O Yudhishthira, Damayanti recognizing Sudev, asked him respecting all her relatives and kinsmen one after another. And, O monarch, oppressed with grief, the princess of Vidarbha began to weep bitterly at the unexpected sight of Sudev, that foremost of Brahmanas and the friend of her brother. And, O Bharata, beholding Damayanti weeping and conversing in private with Sudev, Sunanya was distressed, and going to her mother informed her, saying, Sairendri is weeping bitterly in the presence of a Brahmana. If thou likest, satisfy thyself. And thereupon the mother of the king of the Chedis, issuing from the inner apartments of the palace, came to the place where the girl, Damayanti, was with that Brahmana. Then calling Sudev, O king, the queen mother asked him, Whose wife is this fair one, and whose daughter? How hath this lady of beautiful eyes been deprived of the company of her relatives and of her husband as well? And how also hast thou come to know this lady fallen into such a plight? I wish to hear all this in detail from thee. Do truly relate unto me who am asking thee about this damsel of celestial beauty. Then, O king, thus addressed by the queen mother, Sudev, that best of Brahmanas, sat at his ease, and began to relate the true history of Damayanti. Thus ends the 68th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 69, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Sudev said, There is a virtuous and illustrious ruler of the Vidarbhas, Bhima by name. This blessed lady is his daughter, and widely known by the name of Damayanti. And there is a king ruling the Nishadhas, named Nala, the son of Virasena. This blessed lady is the wife of that wise and righteous monarch. Defeated at dice by his brother, and despoiled of his kingdom, that king accompanied by Damayanti, went away without the knowledge of anyone. We have been wandering over the whole earth in search of Damayanti. And that girl is at last found in the house of thy son. No woman existeth that is her rival in beauty. Between the eyebrows of this ever youthful damsel, there is an excellent mole from birth, resembling a lotus. Noticed by us before it seems to have disappeared, covered, as her forehead is with a coat of dust even like the moon hid in clouds. Placed there by the Creator himself as an indication of prosperity and wealth, that mole is visible faintly, like the cloud-covered lunar crescent of the first day of the lighted fortnight. And covered as her body is with dust, her beauty hath not disappeared. Though careless of her person, it is still manifest, and shineth like gold. And this girl goddess-like capable of being identified by this form of hers and that mole, hath been discovered by me as one discovereth a fire that is covered by its heat. O king, hearing these words of Sudev, Sunanda washed the dust that covered the mole between the Damayanti's eyebrows. And thereupon it became visible like the moon in the sky, just emerged from the clouds. And seeing that mole, O Bharata, Sunanda and the Queen Mother began to weep, and embracing the Damayanti stood silent for a while. And the Queen Mother, shedding tears as she spoke, said in gentle accents, By this thy mole, I find that thou art the daughter of my sister. O beauteous girl, thy mother and I are both daughters of the high-souled Sudaman, the ruler of the Dasaranas. She was bestowed upon King Bhima, and I on Viravahu. I witnessed thy birth at our father's palace in the country of the Dasaranas. O beautiful one, my house is to thee even as thy father's. And this wealth, O Damayanti, is thine as much as mine. As this, O king, Damayanti bowing down to her mother's sister with a glad heart, spake unto her these words, Unrecognized, I have still lived happily with thee, every want of mine satisfied and myself cared for by thee. And happy as my stay hath been, it would without doubt be happier still. But, mother, I have long been an exile. It behoveth thee, therefore, to grant me permission to depart. My son and daughter, sent to my father's palace, are living there. Deprived of their father, and of their mother also, how are they passing their days stricken with sorrow? If thou wishest to do what is agreeable to me, do thou without loss of time, order a vehicle, for I wish to go to the Vidarbhas. At this, O king, the sister of Damayanti's mother with a glad heart said, So be it. And the queen mother with her son's permission, O chief of the Bharatas, sent Damayanti in a handsome litter carried by men, protected by a large escort and provided with food and drink and garments of the first quality. And soon enough she reached the country of the Vidarbhas. And all her relatives, rejoicing in her arrival, received her with respect. And seeing her relatives, her children, both her parents and all her maids to be well, the illustrious Damayanti, O king, worshipped the gods and Brahmanas according to the superior method. And the king rejoiced at beholding his daughter gave unto Sudev 1,000 kin and much wealth and a village. And, O king, having spent that night at her father's mansion and recovered from fatigue, Damayanti addressed her mother, saying, O mother, if thou wishest me to leave, I tell thee truly, do thou endeavor to bring Nala, that hero among men. Thus addressed by Damayanti, the venerable queen became rilled with sorrow. And bathed in tears, she was unable to give any answer. And beholding her in that plight, all the inmates of the inner apartments broke out into exclamation of, Oh! And alas! And began to cry bitterly. And then the queen addressed the mighty monarch Bhima, saying, Thy daughter Damayanti mourneth on account of her husband. Nay, banishing away all bashfulness, she hath herself, king, declared her mind to me. Let thy men strive to find out Nala the righteous. Thus informed by her, the king sent the Brahmanas under him in all directions, saying, Exert ye to discover Nala. And those Brahmanas, commanded by the ruler of the Vidarbhas to seek Nala, appeared before Damayanti and told her of the journey they were about to undertake. And Bhima's daughter spake unto them, saying, Do ye cry in every realm and in every assembly, O beloved gambler, where hast thou gone, cutting off half of my garment, and deserting the dear and devoted wife asleep in the forest? And that girl, as commanded by thee, stayeth expecting thee, clad in half a piece of cloth and burning with grief. O king, O hero, relent to words, and answer her who incessantly weepeth for that grief. This and more ye will say, so that he may be inclined to pity me. assisted by the wind, fire consume at the forest. Further, ye will say that the wife is always to be protected and maintained by the husband. Why then, good as thou art and acquainted with every duty, hast thou neglected both the duties? Possessed of fame and wisdom, and lineage, and kindness, why hast thou been unkind? I fear, this is owing to the loss of my good luck. Therefore, O tiger among men, have pity on me, O bull among men. I have heard it from thee that kindness is the highest virtue. Speaking so, if anybody answereth you, that person should by all means be known, and ye should learn who he is, and where he dwelleth. And ye foremost of regenerate ones, do ye bring me the words of him who hearing this your speech will chance to answer. Ye should also act with such care that no one may know the words ye utter to be at my command, nor that ye will come back to me. And ye should also learn whether he that answers is wealthy, or poor, or destitute of power, in fact all about him. Thus instructed by Damayanti, O king, the Brahmanas set out in all directions in search of Nala overtaken with such disaster. And the Brahmanas, O king, searched for him in cities and kingdoms and villages, and retreats of ascetics, and places inhabited by cowherds. And, O monarch, wherever they went they recited the speeches that Damayanti had directed them to do. Thus ends the 69th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 70, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, after a long time had passed away, a Brahmana named Panala returned to the city of the Vidarbhas, and said unto the daughter of Bhima, O Damayanti, seeking Nala, the king of Nishadas, I came to the city of Ayodhya, and appeared before the son of Bhangasura. And, O best of women, I repeated those words of thine in the presence of the blessed Rituparna. But hearing them, neither that ruler of man nor his courtiers answered anything, although I uttered them repeatedly. Then, after I had been dismissed by the monarch, I was accosted by a person in the service of Rituparna, named Vahuka. And Vahuka is the charioteer of that king, of unsightly appearance and possessed of short arms. And he is skillful in driving with speed, and well acquainted with the culinary art. And sighing frequently, and weeping again and again, he inquired about my welfare and afterwards said these words, Chaste women, although fallen into distress, yet protect themselves and thus certainly secure heaven. Although they may be deserted by their lords, they do not yet become angry on that account, for women that are chaste lead their lives, encased in the armor of virtuous behavior. It behoveth her not to be angry, since he that deserted her was overwhelmed with calamity, and deprived of every bliss. A beauteous and virtuous woman should not be angry with one that was deprived by birds of his garment while striving to procure sustenance and who is being consumed with grief. Whether treated well or ill, such a wife should never indulge in ire, beholding her husband in that plight, despoiled of kingdom and destitute of prosperity, oppressed with hunger and overwhelmed with calamity. Hearing these words of his, I have speedily come here. Thou hast now heard all. Do what thou thinkest proper, and inform the king of it. O king, having heard these words of Panala, Damayanti with tearful eyes came to her mother, and spake unto her in private, O mother, King Bhima should not, by any means, be made acquainted with my purpose. In thy presence will I employ that best of Brahmanas, Sudev. If thou desirest my welfare, act in such a way that King Bhima may not know my purpose. Let Sudev without delay go hence to the city of Ayodhya, for the purpose of bringing Nala. O mother, having performed the same auspicious rites by virtue of which he had speedily brought me into the midst of friends. With these words, after Purnala had recovered from fatigue, the princess of Vidarbha worshipped him with profuse wealth and also said, when Nala will come here, O Brahmana, I will bestow on thee wealth in abundance again. Thou hast done me immense service which none else, indeed, can do me, for owing to that service of thine, O thou best of the regenerate ones, I shall speedily regain my lost lord. And thus addressed by Damayanti, that high-minded Brahmana comforted her, uttering benedictory words of auspicious import, and then went home, regarding his mission to have been successful. And after he had gone away, Damayanti, oppressed with grief and distress, calling Sudev, addressed him, O Yudhishthira, in the presence of her mother, saying, O Sudev, go thou to the city of Ayodhya, straight as a bird, and tell King Rituparna living there these words, Bhima's daughter, Damayanti will hold another Swayamvara. All the kings and princes are going thither. Calculating the time, I find that the ceremony will take place tomorrow. O repressor of foes, if it is possible for thee, go thither without delay. Tomorrow, after the sun hath risen, she will choose a second husband, as she doth not know whether the heroic Nala liveth or not. And addressed by her, O monarch, thus, Sudev set out. And he said unto Rituparna, all that he had been directed to say. Thus ends the 70th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 71, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva continued, having heard the words of Sudev, King Rituparna, soothing Vahuka with gentle words, said, O Vahuka, thou art well skilled in training and guiding horses. If it pleases thee, I intend to go to Damayanti's Swayamvara in course of a single day. Thus addressed, O son of Kunti, by that king, Nala felt his heart to be bursting in grief. And the high-souled king seemed to burn in sorrow. And he thought within himself, perhaps Damayanti in doing this is blinded by sorrow. Or, perhaps, she hath conceived this magnificent scheme for my sake. Alas, cruel is the deed that the innocent princess of Vidarbha intends to do, having been deceived by my sinful and low self of little sense. It is seen in the world that the nature of woman is inconstant. My offense also hath been great, perhaps she is acting so, because she hath no longer any love for me owing to my separation from her. Indeed, that girl of slender waist, afflicted with grief on my account and with despair, will not certainly do anything of the kind, when especially, she is the mother of offspring by me. However, whether this is true or false, I shall ascertain with certitude by going thither. I will, therefore, accomplish Rituparna's and my own purpose also. Having resolved thus in his mind, Vahuka, with his heart in sorrow, spake unto King Rituparna, with joined hands, saying, O monarch, I bow to thy behest, and, O tiger among men, I will go to the city of the Vidarbhas in a single day, O king. Then, O monarch, at the command of the royal son of Bhangasura, Vahuka went to the stables and began to examine the horses. And repeatedly urged by Rituparna to make haste, Vahuka, after much scrutiny and careful deliberation, selected some steeds that were lean-fleshed, yet strong and capable of a long journey and endued with energy and strength of high breed and docility, free from inauspicious marks, with wide nostrils and swelling cheeks, free from faults as regards the 10 hairy curls, born in the country of Sindhu, and fleet as the winds. And seeing those horses, the king said somewhat angrily, What is this, that thou wishest to do. Thou shouldst not jest with us. How can these horses of mine, weak in strength and breath, carry us? And how shall we be able to go this long way by help of these? Vahuka replied, each of these horses bears one curl on his forehead, 2 on his temples, 4 on his sides, 4 on his chest, and 1 on his back. Without doubt, these steeds will be able to go to the country of the Vidarbhas. If, O king, thou thinkest of choosing others, point them out and I shall yoke them for thee. Rituparna rejoined, O Vahuka, thou art versed in the science of horses and art also skillful in guiding them. Do thou speedily yoke those that thou thinkest to be able. Thereupon the skillful Nala yoked upon the car 4 excellent steeds of good breed, that were besides docile and fleet. And after the steeds had been yoked, the king without loss of time mounted upon the car, when those best of horses fell down upon the ground on their knees. Then, O king, that foremost of men, the blessed King Nala began to soothe horses endued with energy and strength. And raising them up with the reins, and making the charioteer Varshnaya sit on the car, he prepared to set out with great speed. And those best of steeds, duly urged by Vahuka, rose to the sky, confounding the occupant of the vehicle. And beholding those steeds gifted with the speed of the wind thus drawing the car, the blessed king of Ayodhya was exceedingly amazed. And noticing the rattle of the car and also the management of the steeds, Varshnaya reflected upon Vahuka's skill in guiding horses. And he thought, is he Matali, the charioteer of the king of the celestials? I find the same magnificent indications in the heroic Vahuka. Or, hath Salihotra versed in the science of horses taken this human shape so beautiful? Or, is it King Nala the reducer of hostile towns that hath come here? Or, it may be that this Vahuka knoweth the science that Nala knoweth, for I perceive that the knowledge of Vahuka is equal to that of Nala. Further, Vahuka and Nala are of the same age. This one, again, may not be Nala of high prowess, but somebody of equal knowledge. Illustrious persons, however, walk this earth in disguise in consequence of misfortune, or agreeably to the ordinance of the scriptures. That this person is of unsightly appearance need not change my opinion, for Nala, I think, may even be despoiled of his personal features. In respect of age this one equals Nala. There is difference, however, in personal appearance. Vahuka, again is endued with every accomplishment. I think, therefore, he is Nala. Having thus reasoned long in his mind, O mighty monarch, Varshnaya, the former charioteer of the righteous Nala, became absorbed in thought. And that foremost of kings Rituparna, also, beholding the skill of Vahuka in equestrian science experienced great delight, along with his charioteer Varshnaya. And thinking of Vahuka's application and ardor and the manner of his holding the reins, the king felt exceedingly glad. Thus ends the 71st section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 72, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, like a bird coursing through the sky, Nala soon crossed rivers and mountains, and woods and lakes. And while the car was coursing thus, that conqueror of hostile cities, the royal son of Bhangasura, saw his upper garment drop down on the ground. And as soon as his garment had dropped down, the high-minded monarch, without loss of time, told Nala, I intend to recover it. O thou of profound intelligence, retain these steeds endued with exceeding swiftness until Varshnaya bringeth back my garment. Thereupon Nala replied unto him, the sheet is dropped down far away. We have travelled 1 yojana thence. Therefore, it is incapable of being recovered. After Nala had addressed him thus, O king, the royal son of Bhangasura came upon a Vibhitaka tree with fruits in a forest. And seeing that tree, the king hastily said to Vahuka, O charioteer, do thou also behold my high proficiency in calculation. All men do not know everything. There is no one that is versed in every science or art. Knowledge in its entirety is not found in any one person. O Vahuka, the leaves and fruits of this tree that are lying on the ground respectively exceed those that are on it by 101. The 2 branches of the tree have 50 millions of leaves, and 2095 fruits. Do thou examine these 2 branches and all their boughs. Thereupon staying the car Vahuka addressed the king, saying, O crusher of foes, thou takest credit to thyself in a matter which is beyond my perception. But, O monarch, I will ascertain it by the direct evidence of my senses, by cutting down the Vibhitaka. O king, when I actually count, it will no longer be matter of speculation. Therefore, in thy presence, O monarch, I will hew down this Vibhitaka. I do not know whether it be not as thou hast said. In thy presence, O ruler of men, I will count the fruits and leaves. Let Varshneya hold the reins of the horses for a while. Unto the charioteer the king replied, There is no time to lose. But Vahuka answered with humility, Stay thou a short space, or, if thou art in a hurry, go then, making Varshneya thy charioteer. The road lies direct and even. And at this, O son of the Kuru race, soothing Vahuka, Ritupurna said, O Vahuka, thou art the only charioteer, there is none other in this world. And, O thou versed in horse lore, it is through thy help that I expect to go to the Vidarbhas. I place myself in thy hands. It behoveth thee not to cause any obstacle. And, O Vahuka, whatever thy wish, I will grant it if taking me to the country of the Vidarbhas today, thou makest me see the sunrise. At this, Vahuka answered him, saying, After having counted the leaves and fruits of the Vibhitaka, I shall proceed to Vidarbha. Do thou agree to my words? Then the king reluctantly told him, Count. And on counting the leaves and fruits of a portion of this branch, thou wilt be satisfied of the truth of my assertion. And thereupon Vahuka speedily alighted from the car, and felled that tree. And struck with amazement upon finding the fruits, after calculation, to be what the king had said, he addressed the king, saying, O monarch, this thy power is wonderful. I desire, O prince, to know the art by which thou hast ascertained all this. And at this, the king, intent upon proceeding speedily, said unto Vahuka, Know that I am proficient at dice besides being versed in numbers. And Vahuka said unto him, Impart unto me this knowledge, and, O bull among men, take from me my knowledge of horses. And King Ritupurna, having regard to the importance of the act that depended upon Vahuka's goodwill, and tempted also by the horse lore that his charioteer possessed, said, So be it. As solicited by thee, receive this science of dice from me, and, O Vahuka, let my equine science remain with thee in trust. And saying this, Ritupurna imparted unto Nala the science he desired. And Nala, upon becoming acquainted with the science of dice, Kali came out of his body, incessantly vomiting from his mouth the virulent poison of Kakotka. And when Kali, afflicted by the Mayanti's curse, came out of Nala's body, the fire of that curse also left Kali. Indeed, long had been the time for which the king had been afflicted by Kali, as if he were of unregenerate soul. And Nala, the ruler of the Nishadhas, in wrath, was bent upon cursing Kali, when the latter, frightened, and trembling, said with joined hands, "Control thy wrath, O king! I will render thee illustrious." Indrasena's mother had formerly cursed me in anger when she had been deserted by thee. Ever since that time, undergoing sore affliction, I resided in thee, O mighty monarch, O unconquered one, miserably and burning night and day with the venom of the prince of snakes. I seek thy protection. If thou dost not curse me who am affrighted and seek thy protection, then those men that will attentively recite thy history, shall be even free from fear on my account. And thus addressed by Kali, King Nala controlled his wrath. And thereupon the frightened Kali speedily entered into the Vibhitaka tree. And while Kali was conversing with Nashadha, he was invisible to others. And delivered from his afflictions, and having counted the fruits of that tree, the king, filled with great joy and of high energy, mounted on the car and proceeded with energy, urging those fleet horses. And from the touch of Kali the Vibhitaka tree from that hour fell into disrepute. And Nala, with a glad heart, began to urge those foremost of steeds which sprang into the air once and again like creatures endued with wings. And the illustrious monarch drove the car in the direction of the Vidarbhas. And after Nala had gone far away, Kali also returned to his abode. And abandoned by Kali, O king, that lord of earth, the royal Nala, became freed from calamity though he did not assume his native form. Thus ends the 72nd section in the Vana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 73, Vana Parva continued. Brihadasva said, after Rituparna of prowess incapable of being baffled, had in the evening arrived at the city of the Vidarbhas, the people brought unto King Bhima the tidings of his arrival. And at the invitation of Bhima, the king of Ayodhya entered the city of Kundina, filling with the rattle of his car all the 10 points, direct and transverse, of the horizon. And the steeds of Nala that were in that city heard that sound, and hearing it they became delighted as they used to be in the presence of Nala himself. And Damayanti also heard the sound of that car driven by Nala, like the deep roar of the clouds in the rainy season. And Bhima and the steeds of Nala regarded the clatter of that car to be like that which they used to hear in days of yore when King Nala himself urged his own steeds. And the peacocks on the terraces, and the elephants in the stables, and the horses also, all heard the rattle of Rituparna's car. And hearing the sound, so like the roar of the clouds, the elephants and the peacocks, O king, began to utter their cries, facing that direction, and filled with delight such as they experience when they hear the actual roar of the clouds. And Damayanti said, because the rattle of his car filling the whole earth, gladdens my heart, it must be King Nala that has come. If I do not see Nala, of face bright as the moon, that hero with countless virtues, I shall certainly die. If I am not clasped today in that hero's thrilling embrace, I shall certainly cease to be. If Nashadha with voice deep as that of the clouds doth not come to me today, I shall enter into a pyre of golden brilliance. If that foremost of kings, powerful as a lion and gifted with the strength of an infuriated elephant, doth not present himself before me, I shall certainly cease to live. I do not remember a single untruth in him, or a single wrong done by him to others. Never hath he spoken an untruth even in jest. Oh, my Nala is exalted and forgiving and heroic and magnificent and superior to all other kings, and faithful to his marriage vow and like unto a eunuch in respect of other females. Night and day dwelling upon his perfections, my heart, in absence of that dear one, is about to burst in grief. Thus bewailing as if devoid of sense, Damayanti, O Bharata, ascended the terrace of her mansion with the desire of seeing the righteous Nala. And in the yard of the central mansion she beheld King Rituparna on the car with Varshnaya and Vahuka. And Varshnaya and Vahuka, descending from that excellent vehicle, unyoked the steeds, and kept the vehicle itself in a proper place. And King Rituparna also, descending from the car, presented himself before King Bhima possessed of terrible prowess. And Bhima received him with great respect, for in the absence of a proper occasion, a great person cannot be had as a guest. And honored by Bhima, King Rituparna looked about him again and again, but saw no traces of the Swayamvara. And the ruler of the Vidarbhas, O Bharata, approaching Rituparna, said, "Welcome. What is the occasion of this thy visit?" And King Bhima asked this without knowing that Rituparna had come to obtain the hand of his daughter. And King Rituparna, of unbaffled prowess and gifted with intelligence, saw that there were no other kings or princes. Nor did he hear any talk relating to the Swayamvara, nor saw any concourse of Brahmanas. And at this, the king of Kosala reflected a while and at length said, "I have come here to pay my respects to thee." And the king Bhima was struck with astonishment, and reflected upon the probable cause of Rituparna's coming, having passed over 100 yojanas. And he reflected, that passing by other sovereigns, and leaving behind him innumerable countries, he should come simply to pay his respects to me is scarcely the reason of this arrival. What he assigneth to be the cause of his coming appeareth to be a trifle. However, I shall learn the true reason in the future. And although King Bhima thought so, he did not dismiss Rituparna summarily, but said unto him again and again, "Rest, thou art weary." And honored thus by the pleased Bhima, King Rituparna was satisfied, and with a delighted heart, he went to his appointed quarters followed by the servants of the royal household. Vrihadasva continued, and, O king, after Rituparna had gone away with Varshnaya, Vahuka took the car to the stables. And there freeing the steeds, and tending them according to rule, and soothing them himself, sat down on a side of the car. Meanwhile, the princess of Vidarbhas, Damayanti, afflicted with grief, having beheld the royal son of Bhangasura, and Varshnaya of the Sutha race, and also Vahuka in that guise, asked herself, "Whose is this car rattle? It was loud as that of Nala, but I do not see the ruler of the Nishadas. Certainly, Varshnaya hath learned the art from Nala, and it is for this that the rattle of the car driven by him hath been even like that of Nala. Or, is Rituparna equally skilled with Nala so that the rattle of his car seemeth to be like that of Nala?" And reflecting thus, O monarch, the blessed and beauteous girl sent a female messenger in search of Nishda. Thus ends the 73rd section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 74, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Damayanti said, "O Kesini, go thou and learn who that charioteer is that sitteth by the car, unsightly and possessed of short arms. O blessed one, O faultless one, approaching him, cautiously and with soft words, make thou the usual inquiries of courtesy and learn all particulars truly. Having regard to the feeling of satisfaction my mind experienceth, and the delight my heart feeleth, I am greatly afraid this one is King Nala himself. And, O faultless one, having inquired after his welfare, thou shalt speak unto him the words of Pranaya. And, O beauteous one, understand the reply he may make thereto." Thus instructed, that female messenger, going cautiously, while the blessed Damayanti watched from the terrace, addressed Vahuka in these words, O foremost of men, thou art welcome. I wish thee happiness. O bull among men, hear now the words of Damayanti. When did ye all set out, and with what object have ye come hither? Tell us truly, for the princes of Vidarbha wisheth to hear it. Thus addressed, Vahuka answered, the illustrious king of Kosla had heard from a Brahmana that a second Swayamvara of Damayanti would take place. And hearing it, he hath come here, by the help of excellent steeds fleet as the wind and capable of going 100 yojanas. I am his charioteer. Kesini then asked, whence doth the third among you come, and whose son is he? And whose son art thou, and how hast thou come to do this work? Thus questioned, Vahuka replied, he of whom thou inquirest was the charioteer of the virtuous Nala, and known to all by the name of Varshnaya. After Nala had, O beauteous one, left his kingdom, he came to the son of Bhangasura. I am skilled in horse lore, and have, therefore, been appointed as charioteer. Indeed, King Rituparna hath himself chosen me as his charioteer and cook. At this Kesini rejoined, perhaps Varshnaya knoweth where King Nala hath gone, and O Vahuka, he may also have spoken to thee about his master. Vahuka then said, having brought hither the children of Nala of excellent deeds, Varshnaya went away whither he listed. He doth not know where Nashadha is. Nor, O illustrious one, doth anybody else know of Nala's whereabouts, for the king in calamity wandereth over the world in disguise and despoiled of his native beauty. Nala's self only knoweth Nala. Nala never discovereth his marks of identity anywhere. Thus addressed, Kesini returned, the Brahmana that had before this gone to Ayodhya, had repeatedly said these words suitable to female lips, O beloved gambler, where hast thou gone cutting off half my piece of cloth, and deserting me, his dear and devoted wife asleep in the woods? And she herself, as commanded by him, waiteth expecting him clad in half a garment and burning day and night in grief. O king, O hero, do thou relent towards her that weepeth ceaselessly for that calamity, and do thou give her an answer. O illustrious one, do thou speak the words agreeable to her, for the blameless one panteth to hear them. Hearing these words of the Brahmana, thou didst formerly give a reply. The princes of Vidarbha again wisheth to hear the words thou didst then say. Vrihadasva continued, O son of the Kuru race, hearing these words of Kesini, Nala's heart was pained, and his eyes filled with tears. And repressing his sorrow, the king, who was burning in grief, said again these words, in accents choked with tears, chaste women, though overtaken by calamity, yet protect themselves, and thereby secure heaven. Women that are chaste, deserted by their lords, never become angry, but continue to live, cased in virtues male. Deserted by one fallen into calamity, bereft of sense, and despoiled of bliss, it behoveth her not to be angry. A virtuous lady should not be angry with one that was deprived by birds of his garment while striving to procure sustenance, and who is burning in misery. Whether treated well or ill, she would never be angry, seeing her husband in that plight, despoiled of his kingdom, bereft of prosperity, oppressed with hunger, and overwhelmed with calamity. And, O Bharata, while speaking thus, Nala, oppressed with grief, could not restrain his tears, but began to weep. And thereupon Kesini went back to Damayanti, and acquainted her with everything about that conversation as well as that outburst of grief. Thus ends the 74th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 75, Nalopakyana Parva continued. Vrihadasva said, hearing everything, Damayanti became oppressed with grief, and suspecting the person to be Nala, said unto Kesini, O Kesini, go thou again, and examine Vahuka, and staying in silence at his side mark thou his conduct. And, O beauteous one, whenever he happens to do anything skillful, do thou observe well his act while accomplishing it. And, O Kesini, whenever he may ask water or fire, with the view of offering him obstruction, thou shalt be in no hurry to give it. And marking everything about his behavior, come thou and tell me. And whatever human or superhuman thou sayest in Vahuka, together with anything else, should all be reported unto me. And thus addressed by Damayanti, Kesini went away, and having marked the conduct of that person versed in horse lore, she came back. And she related unto Damayanti all that had happened, indeed, everything of human and superhuman that she had witnessed in Vahuka, and Kesini said, O Damayanti, a person of such control over the elements I have never before seen or heard of. Whenever he cometh to low passage, he never stoopeth down, but seeing him, the passage itself groweth in height so that he may pass through it easily. And at his approach, impassable narrow holes open wide. King Bhima had sent various kinds of meat of divers animals, for Rituparna's food. And many vessels had been placed there for washing the meat. And as he looked upon them, those vessels became filled with water. And having washed the meat, as he set himself to cook, he took up a handful of grass and held it in the sun, when fire blazed up all on a sudden. Beholding this marvel, I have come hither amazed. Further, I have witnessed in him another great wonder. O beauteous one, he touched fire and was not burnt. And at his will, water falling floweth in a stream. And, I have witnessed another greater wonder still. He took up some flowers, began to press them slowly with his hands. And pressed by his hand, the flowers did not lose their original forms, but, on the contrary, became gay and more odorous than before. Having beheld wonderful things I have come hither with speed. Vrihadasva continued, hearing of these acts of the virtuous Nala, and discovering him from his behavior, Damayanti considered him as already recovered. And from these indications suspecting that Vahuka was her husband, Damayanti once more weepingly addressed Kesini in soft words, saying, O beauteous one, go thou once more, and bring from the kitchen without Vahuka's knowledge some meat that hath been boiled and dressed by him. Thus commanded, Kesini, ever bent on doing what was agreeable to Damayanti, went to Vahuka, and taking some hot meat came back without loss of time. And Kesini gave that meat, O son of the Kuru race, unto Damayanti. And Damayanti, who had formerly often partaken of meat dressed by Nala, tasted the meat that was brought by her handmaid. And she thereupon decided Vahuka to be Nala and wept aloud in grief of heart. And, O Bharata, overwhelmed with grief, and washing her face, she sent her 2 children with Kesini. And Vahuka, who was the king in disguise, recognizing Indrasena with her brother, advanced hastily, and embracing them, took them up on his lap. And taking up his children like unto the children of the celestials, he began to weep aloud in sonorous accents, his heart oppressed with great sorrow. And after having repeatedly betrayed his agitation, Nashadha suddenly left children, and addressed Kesini, saying, O fair damsel, these twins are very like my own children. Beholding them unexpectedly, I shed tears. If thou comest to me frequently, people may think evil, for we are guests from another land. Therefore, O blessed one, go at thy ease. Thus ends the 75th section in the Nalopakyana Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.